Mira's Griffin, written by Christie Valentine Powell, narrated by Talon David. Chapter 1. While the entire village of Mud Cove hid in thatched huts, cowering at any unknown threat, Mira climbed mountains. Girls, Mira had convinced the elders, were not a target. Hunters didn't come back, search parties vanished, but the girls who tended the goats always returned. She clung from a cliff, one hand anchoring her to the rock and the other adjusting her collecting pouch. The rippling cove below filled the world, lined by deadly cliffs. Mira had told the chief that she didn't fear falling. It was almost true. Cheating her fear was half the appeal. The toe of her boot kicked through pockets of slippery moss to the hard rock beneath. She chose her next target, a nest of grass and twigs engulfing the rock shelf that held it. Her fingers closed around a warm, smooth surface, and she slipped the egg into her pouch with the others she had gathered. Only one in this nest. She had to return with a full pouch so that the chief would send her out again. Feathers brushed her back. Mira started. The gulls hovered and dived, but they always pulled up before contact, and she tried to ignore them. Now their cries were changing. She steadied her grip with one hand and then leaned to peer over her shoulder. Something else was flying among the flock. Something huge and dark against the gull's white feathers. A beak as long as her arm caught a gull in midair, snapped down and swallowed it whole. A tail, long and thin and tufted, swished through the air and brushed her shoulder. Mira reached for a lower handhold and began scrambling down the cliff. The creature seemed more interested in the gulls than in her, but eventually the birds would scatter and she would be alone with it. Rock cut into her hand. In her haste, she grabbed a sharp point. She shifted her weight to her other hand, but her balance was off and a boot slipped. Before she realized what had happened, she was falling. Far below, sharp rocks lined the dark sand of a gritty beach. Forcing herself to remain calm, she aimed her legs at the cliff and kicked. Her body ricocheted off, further from the rocks, but not far enough. She twisted, trying to land feet first, trying not to imagine the damage the rocks would cause. Something warm and soft collided with her side, knocking her toward the cove. She had time only to twist her feet downward. Her legs hit water and she bounced back, then landed in a world of wet and cold. She thrashed until her head broke the surface, and great gulps of air filled her lungs. Slowly the shock faded. Infant waves bobbed across her back. She caught her breath and then wriggled each body part. Aches, stings, but everything worked, and her legs allowed her to stagger to her feet. She waded toward shore, then stopped. A creature waited on the beach. Except its twitching tail, it stood motionless, staring with unreadable black eyes. For a second, she thought it was a massive dog. Then she saw the ears riffle in a breeze and realized they were feathered tufts. Fuzzy black down covered its face and tail, and the rest of it was covered in golden feathers. She took several seconds to recognize it as the creature from the sky. Its wings had folded to become forelegs. The back legs looked more bird-like, but all four rested on splayed talons as long as her hand. Mira and the creature stood unmoving, until she became aware of seawater flooding her boots. She would have to come within feet of the creature to reach the beach, but she'd seen it kill a gull with a single blow. Though its back stood above her waist, she doubted it could carry her off. She'd heard of eagles attacking their goats. The birds would dive-bomb their prey, then eat it where it fell. She shuddered and eyed its curved beak. The seconds stretched to minutes, and she shivered from the biting breeze. Still, the creature had not moved. She took a deep breath, and then stepped forward. The creature did nothing. She took another step. Another. She reached the edge of the water, and when the creature still did not react, she perched on a rock and removed the unspun wool padding her boots. Warm breath brushed her chin. She whirled and found herself eye to eye with the creature. She leapt back, but even as she slipped from the rock, she recognized that it had not attacked, not done anything but draw near. "What are you?" she breathed. It cocked its head. She hadn't expected a reply. "You saved me, didn't you? You deflected my fall." The creature had no other reason to plow into her like that. But the thought was astounding. The creature would have had to understand gravity and how much force to change her path. It had to realize she'd be hurt if she fell on rocks, and it had to care. Mira had always shaken her head when her older sister Bodil assigned human traits to her favorite goats. But this strange bird-like creature was more aware than an animal had a right to be. It chirped, a delicate sound for such a large creature. Mira tried to mimic it, whistling between her teeth. It reared back, startled, then chirped again, a higher note with a trill in it. Mira smiled. "I can't make that one." It huffed, an odd, breathy noise that reminded Mira of an impatient sigh. She turned to watch it, and the movement sent her pouch swinging behind her. The pouch! The eggs! Mira swung it in front of her and peered inside. 2 hours of work had exploded in a mass of shells, egg, and wool padding. She groaned and sat back on the rock. I really needed those, she said. Half would have gone to the witch who had cured her brother's fever. Another would be for the elders, as she had promised Chief Sanrique. And if she were lucky, a few would be left for her family. She grabbed a half shell still dripping with yolk and threw it down the beach. The creature leapt forward. Its beak closed around the egg, which vanished. Mira started. It looked like a bird. Why would it eat eggs? The creature turned to nose her pouch again. Mira dumped the contents. The creature caught it before it fell, swallowing wool and all. I'm glad you don't eat people, she told it. It cocked its head, regarding her with both beady black eyes. What are you anyway? She asked. It seems like I ought to call you something. She studied him a moment, then said, Until I figure it out, I shall call you Frecko. It was a childish nickname, better suited for a chubby toddler, but she'd always liked it, and the creature couldn't understand anyway. Frecko chirped back, then raised a claw and tapped her knee. She twitched, and it jerked back, then returned to studying her with that focused, unending gaze. A vibrato cry made both turn. Though it reminded Mira of a small child, she knew that it came from one of the village goats. When the wind was just right, sounds carried from the grazing canyon, almost directly across the cove. Mira's oldest sister Bodil and a few other girls would be tending the goats, and being watched in their turn by guards to keep the threat at bay. Mira felt a moment's unease as the creature studied the canyon mouth, but she forced it back. Frecko hadn't hurt her. Why would he attack her sister? An unknown creature, an unknown threat. But the world could carry any number of unknowns. Frecko leapt, wings unfurled, beating the air. Mira waited, heart in her throat. But she relaxed as the creature circled over the cliffs, away from the grazing canyon and out of sight. What would it be like to have wings, to disappear over the horizon? She stood still several minutes, watching the place where it had disappeared. Then she rinsed her pouch in the sea, took a new wad of wool from a separate pocket of her pouch, and returned to the cliff.